Hello and welcome to the King's Forum podcast show. I have a very special guest with me today, Simba. Hi,
Hello.
Simba. Welcome. First time on my show.
Yes, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm very good. We've been
Good.
talking a lot off camera. It's been fun catching up. More serious now. We go into a more serious topic. It's all about men's mental health this month, and today I thought we'd talk about the wider impact of men's mental health and the people who can be affected by men who are not taking care of their own mental well-being. And Simba has some experiences she would like to share with us. If you could just kick off with one of them that we spoke about off camera, that comes up.
So yeah, there's many experiences that I have had in regards to the effects that men have had on me due to not dealing with their mental health, or not being exposed to mental health awareness. And one of those things has been being pressured into sex, and another one of those things has been rape. So touching on the subject of rape, my experience has been it's such a interesting story, because when you talk about it, speaking with the police, it's almost like a grey area, and I think what people picture when you talk about rape, it's a very black and white experience. It's people picture like a dark alley and screaming and like scenes in the movie, but it's when it comes to real life, it's a whole different vibe, and each experience can be different for everyone.
So yes, yeah, I was just gonna say, go on, tell the story.
Okay, so my experience with rape, I've had many experiences, I would say, that probably classify as rape, which would be the act of saying no, or I don't feel comfortable, or vocalizing that I did not want to have sex and feeling either pressured or forced into that particular scenario. So this being the main case that was reported. So I was 25 at the time, and now I'm going to be 32 in a few days. So happy birthday to me. So yeah, maybe 25 at the time, and I was working for about nearly a year in like a bar restaurant.
Yeah.
And one of my managers, I developed a really great relationship with, and it's strange to say, but I still look back sometimes at those times and the personal jokes and the jokes that we had, and the friendship and the relationship that we had, and I look back at it and I'm like, you can't help but feel a certain sense of fondness, which is bizarre because this man was my rapist. But anyway, we developed such a good sort of back and forth and friendship. There was a definite attraction between the two of us. And if it hadn't been for the fact that I had a boyfriend at the time, a long-term relationship, something may or may not have happened. But what had happened to me was, after months of sort of back and forth flirting, and I remember one specific occasion actually in the bar, there was a bit of chit chat, and then I turned around to him and I said, you do know that, we are joking when we have these little inside jokes, and that I am very loyal to my boyfriend, and and he said to me, well, of course I know that, but what's the fun in it if we have to mention it each time? And I thought, okay, fair enough, I respect that, So anyway, I'd already addressed that, how loyal I was to my boyfriend. And there was an occasion where he was off work and I was off work, and he invited me round, and another co-worker, as it was her birthday, and to just have a few drinks. And we were chilling and we were laughing. Oh my God, I'm just reliving this now and I'm thinking about it. We were chilling and we were laughing, and we were dancing. I remember she was blind, she was almost paralytic, she was really, really drunk. And I remember being sort of standing up, sitting down. And before I knew it, he was stood in front of me, and he had pulled himself out in front of me and forced himself into my mouth.
What?
And I was like so taken aback. Like it wasn't as if there was like kissing and flirting and touching before that. Nothing. Like I said, I was super, super loyal. And it just happened, and I was like kind of froze in the moment. And then suddenly I kind of like had this moment where I don't know how long it passed, maybe 5 seconds, 5-10 seconds, and I was like, hang on a minute, what the, and you just have this click, and I was like, pushed him off me, and I stood up, and I was like, what the fuck are you doing? And he's like, oh, I'm sorry, I got the wrong idea. And I was like, never. And I remember at the beginning of the evening, I said to him, I just want you to know, you know, I'm at your house, we're having a few drinks, but I want you to know nothing's going to happen between us. He said, yeah, no, it's fine, of course not. And so I had that reassurance, that fake reassurance from him. Yeah. And I was so angry in that moment, I wanted to get up and I wanted to leave. And he came up to me, and he had this look on his face, like tears in his eyes, like so apologetic, and was like, I'm so sorry, I totally read it wrong, I just had a few drinks, blah, blah, blah. And this is like my mate, you know, like, so, and I'm like, and I want to get up and I want to walk out, and it's about one in the morning. And where I was living at the time was a very sort of like quiet village place in the southwest, and there's no taxis, there's no buses, so I'm having to walk. And after what's just happened, I don't want to leave this paralytic friend of mine at the house, so I'm like, I have to stay with her. I can't walk her to my house half an hour away. What do I do? So in that moment, I'm like, I just have to draw a line under it, and just for the sake of, you know, just her safety, but also because all of these emotions are going on, and I feel bad, and I'm like, you know, like maybe it was just a mistake, and he's my mate, and he just read it wrong, and now he knows I've had a go at him, you know. It will be okay, it'll be fine. So I stayed, and long story cut short, there was a moment where I was stood in the kitchen. I'd been to bed, and I was in vest and underwear, and I was stood in the kitchen, and he came up to me, and he started kissing me, and you know, I'd had a few drinks, and I was kissing him back. But I said that, you know, it was very clear that he wanted to have sex, and there was a moment where he again pulled himself out, and I said no, and he did it anyway. And so effectively there I was, and I was raped. But what's really, really interesting about that topic is the sort of fight or flight response. And I think anybody in an outside situation can view that story and go, God, if I was there, I would have pushed him off, I would have slapped him, I would have shouted it. Nobody knows how they're going to react in a moment of just absolute, I can't even think of the word.
Shock. You're traumatized.
Trauma. You don't know how you're going to react. You can think that you're going to react in a, I consider myself a very strong woman, and I consider myself very headstrong, and I don't have a problem speaking my mind and telling people my views. And I think so, like, for somebody to for someone like me to have that happen to them, it it bears thinking what's going on with other women who feel that they have less of a voice than I do. Going back to the story, I ended up having, because of my boyfriend at the time, he told me, I told him what happened, and he said, you have to go to the police, and if you don't go to the police, I won't believe you. So I then had to tell the police what happened, even though I really didn't want to, because I had experiences happen like this before, where you're just kind of like, oh no, or you felt pressured and you just get on with it. As a woman, you just get on with it because it's the easiest fucking thing to do. Because going through the whole process of letting the police know, the police notifying my work, everybody in my work finding out about it, everybody in my village finding out about it, gossiping, so and so raped Simba, blah blah blah, da, 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 all this hearsay, and having to go to work every day and know that people were talking about me, judging me behind my back. Oh well, she's a flirt, like it was so traumatizing.
So reliving it, having to relive it by having to tell the story, shame as well, feeling a bit of shame
to even be there, like to even be, oh, why did you go to his apartment, like the blame being projected and switched sometimes from certain people back onto me as if it was my fault. The fact of the point is, I should be able to do whatever the fuck I want. And when it comes down to it, if somebody says no, men have to respect that. And that's something that is really interesting, is why is it that in a lot of cases some men feel that they don't have the control to be able to respect that?
Yeah, that's very interesting, and I can't answer that. But what I would say, going back to mental health, and there is obviously some issues there that, going back to their childhood and things they've experienced, to feel that they don't have to respect that and they can just do what they want, and they're in control in that situation, and because they want this one thing, the woman should go along with it. So there's issues there. So who knows what was going on in this particular person's head at the time to why he thought he could do it. And even though you said no and were not interested in doing it, he still forced himself onto you. So there's some major psychological issues there with this person. So as the story develops, so after you went to the police, what happened after then?
He ended up, there was no proof of, I mean, I had forensics exams literally the day after I reported it, very, very invasive treatments. All the people, the women and the people who were involved were very, very sensitive and incredible, and very supportive, but at the same time it was almost like a support system in something that wasn't supported within itself. Like it was like, yeah, we can provide all of this help for you, but ultimately there's no actual real proof. It's your word against his. So yeah, and he was removed from that particular venue but relocated to another, so he was still within the company, so he didn't even get fired. But ultimately what happened with me was it went on his record. Since then, I think he's had other women speak about their experiences, very similar experiences, where they felt pressured into sex by him. But ultimately what happened with me was, if I had the choice, if it wasn't the experience of going through what I had to go through in regards to people finding out and everybody gossiping about me, and just all of that, and the treat, and the you know, that I had counseling, I had 10 sessions of counseling, but the, you know, the very invasive stuff, that was probably worse than what actually happened. Like,
Wow.
even though, which sounds really, really bad, and I'm not trying to make it seem any less than it was, because it was a very horrible experience, but I feel like a lot of women suffer in silence because it's the easier thing to do. Um, and ultimately that's the point, because a lot of women won't speak up because of what we have to go through, and what I went through was very traumatic, but that it was more to do with it being in the public eye. That was the trauma.
Talk to me about your mental health and how that impacted, you know, just relationship with men, um, trust issues there, because this was someone you trusted, someone who was a friend, and that trust was broken because they had, you know, he was a predator basically. He had he had something in mind which he wanted to do, and he didn't value your friendship or anything. He just wanted this one thing, and he was going to force his way into getting that. So that was a break of your trust. So that's how did that really feel to you? How did you feel after that? Trusting men and your mental health going forwards.
It's been a process. I'm very, very fortunate to have. I don't have a very good relationship with my father. I've never known my father,
Okay.
but thankfully I've always had a father figure around. So my older brother, who's 12 years older than me, there's quite an age difference there, so he's always played that sort of father figure, and I'm very lucky to have a positive relationship with men. And even though, my God, the majority of the experiences that I've had with men have been bad, and Jesus, even just saying that out loud is like, I've taken a lot of negative experiences, but I'm grateful, because I don't see men in a negative light. And that is, I think a lot of that is to do with the relationship that I do have with my brother. And also the good men in my life. You know, they've not all been bad. But it's just made me aware, I think. And I think that's the most important thing to take on it, is your spin on it. You cannot go about thinking that every single man is a rapist or a narcissist or whatever, but unfortunately there is a vast majority, maybe not a majority, maybe that's bad to say, but there is a high percentage of men that do fit the bill in regards to that, and in regards to that statement. And I think it's a difficult one, because I think a lot of it is to do with the way that they view women. And I think the way that they view women has been inherited through a lack of understanding within oneself. And that definitely touches on the subject of mental health. And I do think that the reason why these men might act in coming from a place of violence, whether it be sexual or physical, in relationships towards women, is because they want to feel in control. And why is control so important? And why is it that you feel that a woman is taking control away from you? So talking about control and mental health and the lack of, or the feeling that you are losing control can create, feeling like you're losing control can come from anxiety and stem from early experiences of anxiety.
Yeah, I was going to say that.
So I think a lot of it is to do with how men are brought up. And oh my goodness, the amount of kind of the lack of men's mental health up until more recently is crazy, and how these men are taught not to feel emotions and to repress emotions, and to be told, don't cry, it's a sign of weakness, and you have to be strong, be a man, is the most toxic fucking bullshit there is going, because we're all humans, we're all the same. Yes, we're men and we're women, but we still have the same feelings. And what happens when you push something down, 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 down?
So many years, it's going to come out in anger, violence. You have to process your emotions, and I mean that's what I've been talking about a lot with these episodes on mental health, is that with men, that the lack of processing their emotions just eats away at you, and then it just explodes. It just comes out in a violent nature most of the time, in anger. And that's the wider impact of men's mental health. It's horrible situations like you've experienced, and lots of women out there have experienced these things. So I think it was so important, and thanks for coming on the show to talk about this. So where you at today with your mental health, and kind of how you're feeling? Because these experiences, I know you've spoken about it, so now it's come up and you're mentally, and I'm sure that's not helped actually having to explain that story, but where are you at now?
It's okay. I mean, it's a process. So I mean, this just for me to be able to come on here and speak openly about what happened, and to not feel incredibly emotional, and like, obviously there is elements to that, and I'm still very connected to my story, but I've healed from it. And how have I healed from it? Through mental health. And that's the importance. It's about processing the emotions and speaking about what happened, and shedding light in darkness, and seeing that, not even though I hate what happened to me, and even though I hate what's been done, I try not to look at that experience with poisoned lenses. And I see it as, I feel sorry for the guy. I feel sorry for he's obviously been in a situation where he has felt so out of control in his life that he's panicked, and he's had to take it back. And it's just weakness at the end of the day. So my relationship with men is like, even though on a daily basis I experience some sort of sexual or negative moment, whether it be through something intentional or whether it be through a trigger, I still experience it. Like, I was at the train station earlier, and this guy, I'm literally walking by myself, and he just goes, "Where are you trying to get to?" And I said, "Why?" So I'm sorry, why? This man could be completely innocent in his question, in his statement, but I am not going to tell you that, because everything is flagging up in my brain. Why does he want to know where I'm going? I'm dressed like this today, like I'm looking good, and I'm drawing attention, and like, why is he trying to, like, sort of all of these questions like boom, 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 is something that women have to deal with on like a daily basis. And men aren't aware of that, and they haven't been educated to understand the emotions and the psychological impact a simple question can have on a woman. So I've trailed off, but I believe your question was, how has it affected me today? It affects me every day. But I think the only way that we can do anything about it is by talking about it, by shedding light on the situation. I want to inspire other women to speak openly, and even in times of difficulty, it's just an invitation for growth, babe. Like, you know, like don't be scared. It will be a process, and it's a difficult thing to go through, but you have to voice it, because if we don't voice it, how are people going to know?
Definitely. I totally agree with that. Are you still seeing a therapist, by the way?
I'm not. I do a lot of my own I've been on and off. So the NHS provided me, because it was all done through the system, the NHS provided me with 10 free sessions of counselling, which was really, really helpful, through something called The Bridge, which is, I think, Bristol based, I'm not sure. And through my own I've done a lot of my own healing and a lot of my own work, and I do a lot of kind of spiritual kind of stuff. So when I say that, I don't mean the spirits and stuff. I mean like connecting to the body, mind, and soul. And so when we have something happen to us, we feel it, right? We feel things in our bodies. We feel joy, we feel sadness, we feel anger, we feel jealousy, whatever, rage, whatever's going on. But if we don't connect to that feeling, and we tell ourselves that we cannot feel a feeling, or we're not allowed to feel a feeling, then we try and repress it. We end up repressing it. So by inviting ourselves to be open to the emotion, I mean, we're so open to happiness and to positive things. Why are we not opening up to, or why are we not being open to a negative feeling? Like anger. Okay, so when it comes to men's mental health, anger is a very top one. But we're not able to process that anger, because it's just rah, 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 and then suddenly an emotion might come up, and then they'll just be like, but what anger often leads to is coming from a place of sadness. Yeah,
definitely.
So if you can allow yourself to, it's okay to be angry. I'm not saying don't be angry, but direct your anger into a pillow. Don't direct it into a woman's face. Direct it into a punch bag. Go to the gym, but you have to allow yourself to feel it, because by allowing yourself to feel that emotion, you're able to pinpoint where it's coming from. Why am I angry? Like, what have I been thinking about? And you could be thinking thoughts that you didn't even realize you were thinking, which is why journaling is so important. It's being able to write things down. And so men actively journaling is a really, really important thing when it comes to dealing with mental health.
Yeah, it's definitely helped me. Journaling definitely helps me. Things I've discovered for myself, you know, the things that bring me joy, things like cooking and baking, going for long walks, yoga, meditation, definitely helps me to process these emotions that I've suppressed for years. So yeah, that's why I always encourage that, especially talking about men's mental health, is to do things, is to develop a toolkit, ways in order to help you manage your emotions instead of just suppressing them. Try and move through them, try and experience them. Yes, it's uncomfortable being that vulnerable and being that naked to it all. But the more you do it, the more it becomes natural to you. It's a practice like anything. The more you do it, it becomes something you master. So when you spot these triggers, you know what to do in order to get you through it and work through it. So, you know, that's what I would say to the men out there struggling with their emotions. You know, the wider impacts, it can be very devastating. You know, the impacts it can have on people around you and the way we behave when we're out in public socializing and what have you, and you're dealing with all this trauma that hasn't been processed, and it's been building up all these years, and it can come out in a really angry, violent, negative way. So, you know, that'd be my advice to the men out there. And it's not all men, of course. This is just a horrible example that, you know, that you experienced, and you've experienced a few of them, and, you know, just thought we'd bring some light to it, kind of the wider impact of men's mental health. But yeah, this is, you know, and there's a lot of women who have been on the other end of this as well, you know, in other ways, you know, passive aggressiveness, domestic violence, you know, all sorts. So yeah, we need to take care of ourselves. That's men and women actually. And but you know, men are the ones who are not so open in expressing how they're feeling, you know, and what they're experiencing. You know, women do that as a natural thing, that's a part of their makeup. Men, you know, as you mentioned earlier, we're in these environments and have been brought up in a way that, you know, that's a sign of weakness to share how our emotions of sadness, or if you want to cry or whatever it is. You know, we're meant to be the protectors, the providers, you know, that old school mentality that is meant to be us, you know, the strong ones, when really the strength is in connecting with how you're feeling. That's real strength.
I think there's a truth in men being the of you know, obviously we live in a world now where women might do full-time work and men might stay at home with the baby. But in regards to energetically and spiritually speaking, there is a truth in the fact that there is a truth in men being the provider.
Yeah.
But I think, how are you able to provide for a woman if you're not able to connect to what you need and what needs to be provided for you? You know, like, this is the thing, is it's like men are supposed to provide. Okay, so they you know, they've got this mindset that it's like, okay, I need to do this, and if I don't do this, then I'm not a man. And why am I providing? Am I providing to just come home to, you know, a messy house with kids running around screaming and being shouted and being nagged, and there's this negative, there's negative attachment to it, and also subconsciously a resentment.
Oh, 100%.
A resentment towards women, I think. And so maybe that's where the anger comes from, because it's like, okay, so I'm supposed to provide for you, but what are you doing for me? Would you say that there's some truth in that?
Yeah, there's some. I think some men do.
Obviously not all men.
That's what I mean. It's you know, that'd be too general to say every man thinks that, because every man doesn't. I got a really close friend of mine who has been a stay-at-home dad, while his wife goes out and provides. And yeah, he works part-time, but she's bringing in the majority of the, you know, the she's taking a financial weight mostly herself. And he raises their child. So, and he's happy, he's over the moon. And I don't know, maybe there might be a bit of a little result, who knows, but he chose that. That was something they decided between them, because he wanted another child. They had one before and he wanted another one. So it all depends on the situation. In some cases, I'm sure there is. But again, it's being aware of what you're feeling and connecting with that. And I always say, look into the why. Yeah. So we can feel this way. You can have these emotions, feelings about a situation, but look into why you're feeling that way. Why do you resent women for that? What is it about that that's bothering you? Why are these feelings coming up? And it's addressing that. It's actually facing that and having the conversations with your partner or yourself, and digging deep and finding out why. Where's that come from? What's the root of that? So that's how I look at things. So yes, I'm sure there is, and I agree with you to some extent, but it's not all men. So, but some men do. Yeah, I'd agree.
I think what it often boils down to is the relationship that we have with our parents,
Big time.
and that cannot be taken away, because those first 5 years of your life are the year of the sponge. Like, your brain is a sponge and you will absorb everything that's going on around you. So if you are exposed to toxic environments and unhealthy relationships and unhealthy dynamics, that's all you know and that's all you learn. So if you're going around, like, if you're born into an environment where, like, there's violence going on in the family, like, say if you're smacked, or you're beaten as a kid, or you're used to an environment where, I'll give you an example. So for me, as much as I love my family, I don't think I had the most healthy dynamic growing up. So I didn't have my father around. My mum was a single mum, very, very poor. And I'm blessed, by the way, I'm blessed to have all of these experiences, because it's made me the person that I am today. And I will say that. But in regards to technically speaking, what is a healthy scenario is I was not. And I was born into, like, an environment of being in London and being in, like, a rough area, and my mum was really poor, and I didn't have a dad around, and my mum was dealing with her own stuff, and she's had my brother and my sister 12, 14 years apart from me, and she was born into, not born into, she went into an early marriage where she had to play wife and do all of these things, and she ended up resenting her husband for not being there, and then suddenly, like, he's cheated on her, and and there's just all this anger and all this rage, and then she's now got this new found sense of freedom. So she's going out when she can, and she's getting my brother and my sister to babysit me, and like this, and maybe and me being babysat by, like, my dad's parents, who I was, or my dad's mum, who I did have a relationship with, but that being a really, really uncomfortable environment for me, and just this kind of this relationship that my mum had with men, and how much as she didn't want it, but it might have, like, subconsciously had an effect on the way that I viewed men, and how I thought growing up I would be in, like, a healthy relationship. Like, there was one guy who I was with for like 4 years, and he came from a very healthy family background. Like, his parents were still together, they'd been together for years, and he was very loyal because of that. But because of me, because I've been sort of brought up to sort of subconsciously believe that all men are cheaters, I'm subconsciously thinking, like, oh God, is he gonna cheat? And this was, like, from the age of like 15 to 19, and subconsciously absorbing all of that, inheriting someone else's beliefs and ideas, and it subconsciously being, like, rubbed off onto you, and and dealing with that as well, and having conversations with yourself about your environment, and what was your relationship like with your mum, or what was your relationship like with your dad, and how has that impacted you, or how do you think it might have impacted you? that's really important conversation that people need to be having with themselves. People don't have conversations enough with themselves. You know, they're not checking in with themselves enough. It's just like, I feel a certain type of way. I don't like this way that I feel. How can I get rid of it? I'm going to get a bag in. I'm going to get a bag of coke in on a Friday night because that distracts me from the pain. I'm going to, and even though it's a positive, like, even though it's a positive way of dealing with your emotions, but I'm going to go gym and I'm going to lift and I'm going to surround myself and like, yeah, good for you. Like, but are you doing that as a distraction, or are you doing it for like the right reasons to better yourself, you know? And I don't think there's enough going on where people are wanting to have these conversations with themselves, have conversations with other people and educate themselves and learn. And I think that's why there's a real gap going on. There's a gap between men and women.
I agree.
Women are needing stuff from men, and we're resenting them because we're not getting it. Men are feeling nagged, and we're resentful. They're resentful to the women for nagging them, and there's not enough conversations going on.
I agree. I totally agree with that. That's exactly it. Any last words, Simba?
Last words would be, men, if you're listening, lots of love to you, positive vibes, and please just speak, be vulnerable, allow yourself to be vulnerable. Vulnerability is not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of strength. And if you can just vocalize how you're feeling, even if that feels uncomfortable within you, welcome the challenge, because it's only going to help you grow. And for the ladies out there, if you have resonated with my story at all, again, an invitation for growth. If it feels uncomfortable, bring it on. We're fucking women, we can handle that shit. Let's do it. Let's speak out. And hopefully we can make a change by communication.
Cool. Thank you very much, Simba. And where can people find you? What socials are your socials?
So you can find me on Simba_Lions_Melody, where you will see lots of traveling, lots of sass, and lots of anything musical festival related. And yeah, that's what I would say for now.
Cool. Thank you very much for your time, Simba. Much appreciated, and sharing your story.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And people, please like, share, and subscribe, and see you on the next episode. Peace.